It's my privilege today to introduce our speaker, Joshua Atkinson. He has been a counselor for 35 years, working with children, teens, the elderly, and people with addictions. He is a fellowship minister and an avid student of the Course in Miracles. We had the opportunity to talk with Joshua last night, and he told us some amazing stories about his experiences. I think that sometimes the stories a person tells gives you an incredible glimpse into the quality of a person, and I have come to recognize the wisdom, kindness, and giving nature of Joshua. And Joshua is a great storyteller. We are in for a real treat today. I asked Joshua's permission. He said it was okay to reveal to you that he came to the fellowship, and that was more than 40 years ago, from Santa Claus land. Joshua calls his talk A Case of Mistaken Identity, and asks the ageless question of, who am I? Let's greet Joshua Atkinson.
Thank you. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. This is in many ways home, because this fellowship has served as a birthplace for many of us, and it was certainly a birthplace for me into a new awareness of who I am. It took a while to get there because I was pretty well convinced that there was something terribly wrong with me for a long, long time, and didn't really deserve much because of that. But in the course of first arriving at the fellowship, I learned a few things that were important, that set me on a path of discovering the truth of who I am, and in that same process being able to see the truth of who others are. And what occurred was this. In 1977, I was working at a place called Santa Claus Land. And I grew up in the amusement park business. That was a family thing, even though I was trained as a counselor in college and had actually worked as a counselor for a short time until I realized that that wasn't for me, because I did not have the skills to really be effective at that time. Had the knowledge, but not the awareness that needs to come with it. So I chose to get back into the amusement park business and found myself in Santa Claus Land. And one of the things at Santa Claus Land that was mightily impressive to me was that there was a fellow there who really thought he was Santa Claus. I would have lunch with this gentleman. He was about 70 or 75 years old. He was about 5'5" and probably about 200 pounds. Had the glasses that were real and the beard that was real. And we would have lunch together, and he would just simply stay in character. I was having lunch with Santa Claus every day. And I thought, well, he really found his niche, because even though he was portraying, there was a genuineness there with him. There was a genuine caring. And that was what I found most rewarding for my time at Santa Claus Land. Yet, I was still asking this question, the same question that I wrote in the intro here. So, who am I? What the heck am I doing? Why am I here? What the heck is going on in this world? Which is actually a great question these days. And I thought, I need to get to another level of awareness or understanding. So I took a class at University of Evansville in psychic development. I'd been a student of Edgar Cayce for some time and so on, but I thought, maybe I can get some help there. So I went to this class in psychic development. The instructor's name was Mr. Light, and he sold light bulbs for a living. That's what he did. And I thought, well, that all kind of adds up. And while I was there, he mentioned that there was this group coming to town offering a course called Inner Light Consciousness. And he recommended it. He was familiar with Paul's work. He recommended it, and I was ready to jump at anything at that point, because I truly was feeling like I don't know who the heck I am or where I'm going or what's happening here. Santa Claus Land is, it's got its moments, However, it just wasn't that fulfilling, So I signed up for the class. It was about a 60-mile drive. At that time, it was a 10-day class, so I was back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And that just illustrates I was determined. So anyway, this guy named Paul Solomon is primarily teaching the class. There was some other folks with him. And actually, 3 things happened during that class. The first thing that happened was that this Paul looked at me during maybe halfway through the sessions, and I was sitting eagerly in the front row, being the eager student, and he looked at me and he said, "You don't feel very lovable, do you?" And I thought, where in the heck did he get that from? And then I said to myself, I said, well, I don't know the answer to that, but I do know the answer to that. He's hit the nail on the head right there. I don't feel very lovable. That's a source of irritant and angst and trouble for me. That's because I didn't know who I was. I thought I was this and I thought I was that. My mom raised me to be this shy boy. I thought my name was Shy. So anyway, he said that, and I took that in and I sat with it a lot, and I realized that I've got something to learn from this guy, because he said it in a really kind way. It wasn't a probing question. It was an offering for exploration. So I did that, and didn't find a lot at that point in time, but just it was a good question to entertain. So a little bit after that, I was in the bookstore, and in the bookstore there was this lovely lady handling the logistics of the gathering, the conference in there, and selling some books and such. And I went into the bookstore, and I was immediately struck with the lightness and the purity and the genuineness of this person. There was like an innocence there that was surprising. It was like something I'd not encountered before. And I just felt immediate connection with that, or desire for that. I wanted what I saw. And this lovely being was also about 8 months pregnant and very married. So there wasn't any like sexual attraction thing going on here. This was just beauty. And I thought, well, there is something to this, because there's evidence here. Here's a happy person. I wonder how she got there. And it ended up being my wife. I mean, it was Analia, is who it ended up being. After some 2 or 3 years later, I guess, she finally got divorced, and I finally got to move into the picture. And I chased her hard, as you guys that were around here know. I chased her pretty hard. I chased her a little too hard a couple of times. She kicked me to the curb, But even in that, just to skip ahead a hair, even in that kicking me to the curb thing made me realize that I wasn't being true to myself in my relationship with her. I was seeing her as fulfilling some kind of need that I perceived that I had. So in the course of recovery from getting kicked to the curb and looking like a refugee, I found out that I was lovable. And I could be lovable regardless of who I was with. And so when that occurred, all of a sudden I became attractive to her, I think. And in that solid place that I found myself, that place of self-recognition, of being lovable and capable of loving, she allowed me back into her life, and here we are 38 years later, or something like that. So that was the second thing, was the impact of the wife. But the third thing was very surprising. During the course of that 10-day ILC class, there was this fella, this is Evansville, Indiana, okay? Midwest, very plain, very simple. There was this fella sitting in the middle of the class. He was from India. And he had his sari, and he had his top knot, and he was very still and very quiet, sat there like this most of the time through all the class. And I thought, what an odd character. You know, sitting in the middle of Indiana looking like that. You know, what is that? And, you know, I recognized, because I saw him interacting with Paul particularly and with others there, that he was part of the group. So, but I never approached him, because that was news to me. I'd never met anybody like that, or seen anybody like that, really. So kind of just kept my distance until towards the end of the 10 days, he came up to me and he took me by the hand, which, I mean, I'm a Southern boy. We don't hug. We punch each other in the arms, you know, when we want to say hello. So he took me by the hand, and I thought, wow, now this is odd. And then he led me into this room that was empty in the back there, and sat down on the floor, middle of the floor, and said, sit down. So I'm game, because I'm in a learning mode, so I'm game and not too scared, a little bit scared. And he looked at me and says, now what is it you do for a living? And I said, I work at Santa Claus Land. And he looked at me and he went, oh. And does that give your life meaning? And of course, you know, that question stopped me just like Paul's question did. And I had to really reconfigure what my thinking was and what I was doing with my life and what I wanted to do with my life. And that resulted in an invitation to come to the fellowship from Tarsing. He said, I think you need to come study with us. And so I had this picture of a almost like a temple or something where I was going to go study and become holy. You know, that was the plan. and so I very quickly gave my notice. Very quickly got rid of whatever possessions I didn't need, except for I got rid of my tennis racket. And I always missed that tennis racket. It's the best tennis racket I ever owned. Landed at Virginia Beach, and kind of the early evening hours, and went to the address that I'd been given. It was down on Laskin Road, the old, what was it called, the Dolphin? Yeah, it was one of the, White Heron. Landed at the White Heron on a Wednesday night, knocked on the door, nobody answered, knocked on the door, and then this lady answered the door, and she said, who are you and what do you want? And I thought, oh, let me check the address here. You know, maybe I'm in the wrong place. But as it turned out, I was interrupting a prayer healing service, and she didn't like that. So I got this kind of stern response as an intro to the fellowship when I landed here. However, there was a fellow named, you might know him, a fellow named Mark Sheen, who was also involved in that group at that time, who's just one of the dearest people that you'll ever meet if you get a chance to meet this guy. He lives down in Pungo. Anyway, he was standing there, and he saw what was going on, and he came out, and he got in between the school marm and I, and he put his arm around him and said, well, come on in. And now that was the real introduction to the fellowship. So since that time, of course, I've been involved in one way, shape, or form over a number of years. Analia and I living in Hawaii, our heart is here often, and our bodies are here once or twice a year. So having said all that, I'm really grateful to be here, and would like to look at the topic of today, the case of mistaken identity. That topic came up as a result of my daughter's choice, who's 32 and is beginning to ask that question. As we all have surely at some point in our lives ask that same question. Maybe still are asking that same question at times. Another way to ask that question would be, what is my purpose here? Why am I here? What is my function here? And what I would suggest is that the answer to a problem is never at the same level as the problem. If you think about that for a minute, even in mathematics or science or psychology, we can rearrange things, but what are we rearranging? So if the answer is not at the same level as the problem, then how do we get to the level where we can actually see what the problem is and what it means and where to go with it? So the way for me has been to look at the power of love. Everything that's present when I ask that question, who am I, is rooted in fear. There's some sense of lack, there's some sense of longing, there's some sense of absence. Or I wouldn't be asking that question. So one of the ways that I've found that is helpful for me to address that is ask myself, well, who is asking the question? At what level am I experiencing now as I ask that question? And if I can approach that question as simply one that doesn't need an answer at that level, then I can put it to the side. Because I've already tried that. I mean, we've all probably tried to find answers in a multitude of books and lectures and so on and so forth. But if I can put that aside for a moment, then maybe I can discover, maybe I can open to an answer that's already there, just waiting for me to hear it. But I'm too busy with my trying to figure stuff out to be able to hear it. So how do I do that? How do I still my mind? Well, I don't know how to do that. My mind runs like a Grand Central Station, And you put a still small voice in the middle of Grand Central Station, what are the chances of hearing that? So what I found that is helpful is just to become what I would call an observer or a witness. That doesn't mean to be dispassionate. That doesn't mean not to care about people and their situations. But it just simply means to be able to, as Frederick Lionel taught when he came to the fellowship, to be able to stand behind yourself and observe yourself and observe what you're doing, what you're thinking, what's occurring in this immediate moment. See, in this immediate moment right now, there's a configuration, a multitude of possibilities. We call them by names and give them bodies. But in this very moment, there's this multitude of possibilities that has come to a confluence, and it's us. And this moment of sharing that's occurring right now really doesn't have anything to do with what these eyes are seeing. What I'm feeling is that everyone in here is connected and connected to me. That's why I came today. I didn't come to teach you anything. I came to learn something. And what underpins that is love. It's pure and simple. That's the nature of who we are. So if we want to ask that question, there's the answer. The talk is over. The answer is love. Now, the evidence of that, that's what I think most of us need, because those are nice words, as Aunt Leah was saying in the meditation. Those are wonderful words. But what's the evidence? Where's the truth of that? The power of love. I'm one that has a propensity to getting upset easily once upon a time. Maybe not so much anymore, but maybe once upon a time. And if something doesn't go the way that I think it should be going because of my beliefs, then I'll stomp my feet, and I'll snort, and I'll spit, and I'll cuss. And I might do more than that. So there was an right? Once upon a time, I said. And so this presence of who I am can come forth actually in spite of myself, in spite of my preferences, in spite of my beliefs, in spite of what I think is right and what I think is wrong. And a story that goes with that, just to illustrate that. I suppose everybody in here has probably been mad one time or another. I could probably ask for a show of hands, and there wouldn't be many in here. But so I hope you can relate to this as the power of love. There was a situation not too long ago, and I was like fajita over there with a bone in my mouth. Man, I wouldn't let it go. I wouldn't let it go because, by God, I was right, and they were wrong. And it involved what I considered to be, based on my belief system, a serious matter, the safety of a child. And boy, I was ready to go to war. I was. And was plotting. Boy, I had all kind of devious plots, man. I was ready to go. And this went on and on and on for a lighter, I don't know, maybe a year or so, something like that. And then I said, Joshua, what in the world are you doing? You know, all you're doing is poisoning yourself with this toxic anger and resentment. I said, this is not good. This doesn't feel good. So what am I going to do? So I really didn't know what to do, because I'm a dog with a bone. I don't know how to let that bone go. And it got to a crescendo, this issue with this individual. It got to a crescendo, and it was approaching violence. As a counselor, I taught anger management for years and years and years. Was I using any of those tools? Nah. And when it got to the crescendo, I realized that, hey, there's got to be another way here. I've got to find another way. I've got to see this differently, because where this is heading is a place that I don't want to go, which would have been jail, probably. So I stopped and I got still. And it only took about 3 seconds, because I knew that I didn't need to identify myself as that angry, hurt, scared individual that I was seeing myself. Justifiably, I mean, I could justify it in a heartbeat, but it was still not working. So I said, okay, there's got to be another way. There's got to be a better way. Show me. Now, who was I talking to? I was talking to myself. I was talking to the part of me that God created, not my idea of myself, but the part of me that God created. I said, you've got to show me here. And so what happened? I walked back into the scene. There, the individual was still steam coming. And I just looked at him and I said, and this was in spite of myself, but out it came. I love you. In a minute. And as soon as I said that, as soon as that love was expressed in words and in form and in heart, the whole scene changed. The individual started crying. I mean, 30 seconds before we were ready to come to blows, you know, started crying. And just simply all of that stuff, all of that identification that I had made that there was something wrong with him, there's probably something wrong with me, all that just disappeared. And in that moment, there was an exchange. And that exchange was an exchange of who we really are. And there was no need for the other. There was simply no need. There was no value in it. There was no need for it. And that started a healing process, which continues. So now this individual and I can look at each other and we can see each other with the eyes of love. Much better than what was going on before. So I give you that as an example of the recent power of love for me. So who am I? Didn't Popeye say something about that? What did Popeye say? I am that I am? What was it? Oh, you got to go like that, right? I am that I am. Right. So I wonder if it could be that simple. I wonder if it could be that simple. It's just simply to say, I am, when we ask that question. And what comes with that, we can evaluate. Am I a counselor? Well, what's the value in thinking that way? If there's value there, so be it. If there's no value there, then so be it. Because I am that I am. And the form that takes, whether it be as a counselor or as a beautiful pianist, or whatever form that it takes, as an artist, like Marcia there, Jane Jacks. Where's James's?
Right over here on the shoulder.
Yeah.
All the three.
Yeah, Jane Jacks. The form that expression takes is fine. It's good. It's well. But what's most important is the love that's moving it, the love that's behind it, the love that it represents and reflects. That's about the best we can do in this world, I suspect, is find reflections of love and experiences of love. I could be wrong about that, but that's the best I've been able to do. So how do we end this? We're at the 30-minute mark here. How do we end this? See, when I come to these talks, I don't plan to talk. I don't plan to show up and see what happens. I have an idea. How about at the end of this talk, when we're all dispersing, we spend 1 10-second time frame looking for God in another's eyes and see what's reflected there. 5 seconds, if 10 is too much. Just look very quickly and see if you see God. Now, what you could say is see if you see love, see if you see peace, see if you see joy, see if you see light. Any of that, it all matches, it all fits, it's all the same. So I'm going to look for love in all the right places. All right, thank you.